What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the reveal of the number 8 team in my 2022 NFL Power Rankings, as today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Cincinnati Bengals. Before we get started, though, if you could do me a huge favor, please take a moment to hit that like button down below. It's a free and easy way to really support my channel in a big way. It tells YouTube you enjoyed the content and to push it out to get more viewers. I put a lot of time and effort into this series, so it's really important to me that these videos continue to do well, and you hitting that like button goes a long way. I really appreciate it. While you're down there, make sure you subscribe as well. You can join me on this journey to 100,000 subscribers, and you won't miss any of these deep dive team previews as we lead up to the number 1 team in my rankings and into some more great NFL content as the season kicks off here pretty soon. But coming in at number 8, I think there will be a decent amount of Bengals fans who are upset with this ranking after they were in the Super Bowl last year. And I just want to remind you, I'm with you guys, Bengals fans. My wife's a Bengals fan. I was rolling with the Bengals, both betting-wise and cheering on the Bengals in that epic playoff run last year. Hell, I was even on Twitter going to war for you guys and Joe Burrow when I was one of the first people to come out and say Joe Burrow is a top 10 quarterback. And yes, Cowboys fans, he is better than Dak Prescott. And at that point in time, was not a popular opinion, so I will go to battle for you Bengals fans. But as far as 2022 goes, I don't want to say the Bengals are a regression candidate, because they were a 10-win team and they were a Cinderella team last year that went on an epic playoff journey. But I will say, if the expectation is that they repeat those performances, I do think there are areas of this team that need to get better. I don't think there's any defined weaknesses, but now that we're towards the top of these rankings, there are multiple, not multiple, every single team has a multitude of high-end strengths. And I think with the Bengals, there are more scattered positions of mediocrity, for lack of a better term, that will need to take steps up into this year if they're going to repeat on this epic, Super Bowl run. That said, I still think this is a really good team, and I have them ranked here in the, Super Bowl contenders tier. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this video. We're going to break down, where their strengths are, but also where some of those points of needed growth are for the Bengals if they're going to finish this thing and win a Super Bowl. And honestly, the biggest area that I have question marks about this team is the coaching staff with Zach Taylor. And I get it. I do. The team and the city has bought into Zach Taylor. Joe Burrow likes Zach Taylor. There is an element of leadership there. He goes and hands out game balls at local bars after the game of a big win. Like, I get it. He's a likable guy, and he gets credit for the leadership aspect here. I do rank him 21st among head coaches in the league. But the reality is he was brought in here to be a offensive guru, an innovator, and a great play caller for the Bengals, and I do not believe he's done that. Really across the board, I think from an innovation standpoint, this is very much the 2019 Rams offense, and I look at a lot of the cool new deep passing concepts that Sean McVay has drawn up for the Rams, and again, we're talking about trying to win a Super Bowl here, so the expectation changes, right? You don't want a good, not great offensive mind. You want the best of the best if you want to get to where the Bengals want to go. And I do not think Zach Taylor's innovating up to par with what the best offensive minds in the league are doing. But beyond that, I actually think he's a really poor play caller as far as reading the room, putting his pulse on the game, the heartbeat of the game flow, and understanding when he needs to push the right buttons, whether it's a play action shot or come out in shotgun and throw deep on early downs, or when it is appropriate to run. I mean, he freaking runs way too much in a predictable manner that set up Joe Burrow in this offense in really difficult down and distance situations consistently. So there's that aspect of it. And then my biggest issue with Zach Taylor is he's really bad at breaking his tendencies. I think this offense exploded in the first half of the season, even 2/3 of the season, but kind of starting with their performance against Vic Fangio's Broncos and moving on closer to the playoffs and then into the playoffs, I think the Bengals put on tape what they want to run and when they want to run it, and the opposing defenses knew when they were going to do what they were going to do. And it's important to remember that the Bengals were not good offensively in the playoffs. Yeah, they made some big plays, Joe Burrow and these receivers, and they're going to do it again this year. But they were put in some really compromising situations, and without the defensive really shutdown performances, as far as modern NFL standards go, you're talking about holding opponents to 17 to 24 points consistently. That's really damn good. You're not going to expect for that to happen again and to go to the Super Bowl. You're going to have to get to the playoffs when opponents know your tendencies and come in with a better game plan that's different than the same one from week 3. So, yeah, I have some issues with Zach Taylor. He might prove me wrong. He's still young. He's 39. But I've had concerns about this for 3 years. And when I really watched the tape last year, they were still there. So, needless to say, I'm not overly impressed with Brian Callahan either. I don't think he's bringing a ton of juice and innovative adjustments to this offense. And when you look at his resume, it's pretty dang unimpressive itself. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say unimpressive. He's been coaching in the league for over a decade. That is impressive. But as far as what each stop has accomplished, where he's been, it's pretty mediocre, man. Things flamed out down the board with Mike McCoy, Adam Gase, Gary Kubiak in Denver. None of those offenses worked. He was with Jim Caldwell, and his offense was probably the best he had 2016, 2017, and then that lousy first year under John Gruden and the Raiders. They go 4-12, and then he ends up in Cincinnati as Zach Taylor's offensive coordinator. Like, I'm not trying to dunk on Brian Callahan. I'm not going to act like I know too much about him. I like that he's worked under all these different coaching influences. But again, I don't think he or Zach Taylor are bringing too much to the mix, and these guys are pretty young. So if something's going to hold this team back, there might be some other things in this video, but the biggest thing for me is this offensive coaching staff, which I was unimpressed by despite their success last year. And I'm a little worried that Zach Taylor is going to continue to win because he's got Joe Burrow, and he's going to be the Mike McCarthy to Joe Burrow's Aaron Rodgers, basically. So I really hope he proves me wrong, but I definitely have my doubts there. So they are going to rank 17th for pass game coaching, 24th for run game coaching. Again, not terrible, but you want those in the top 10 if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? You want really well-coached offenses in the modern NFL, and I do not believe the Bengals have that. Now, as far as what this team's scheme actually looks like, it is, as I mentioned, Sean McVay's offense. It is the wide zone McVay scheme here, which is very similar to the Shanahan play scheme, where you're getting outside zone, deep play action shot plays. The main difference is a much heavier dose of 11 personnel, which is one running back, one tight end, 3 wide receivers, as opposed to Shanahan, who on early downs really likes more 12 personnel with 2 bigs out there and just 2 wide receivers. And because of these McVay offenses being more 11 personnel, it does open up early downs for a little bit more quick game, a little bit more of that modern pro spread approach, because you are able to spread the defense out a little bit more, and you have better route runners out there. You can go a little bit more shotgun, and that's no different here than it is with the Rams. That is the biggest difference between these teams and really the Shanahan lineage, if you will. And that quick game does work really well with Joe Burrow. So while it is a wide zone offense, it is a lot of play action boots, shot plays off of that. They do sprinkle in their fair share of quick game. And then third down is your standard drop back passing game. So there is the scheme offensively. It's a scheme that works. We know that around the league. The Packers run it, the Rams run it, and the Bengals run it. But you just want to see a little bit better play calling and innovation and mixing up their tendencies much better. Now, all of that said, I don't have any concerns about the defensive coaching here with Lou Anarumo, who did a phenomenal job last season. And I think the only reason he didn't really get a head coach job is because he was a bit of a breakout coach last year. He was another guy that we kind of had questions about coming into last year. Another guy similar to Brian Callahan, not the most impressive resume. I think he was a big surprise when he got the job here in Cincinnati in 2019. I think a lot of people were like, who? Lou who? And I was no different. I had never really known who Lou Anarumo was. And you look at his resume, it's not like he was working with these incredible defenses. But he comes to Cincinnati, and the first couple of years were pretty rough. I think if things went differently last year, they may have gone to a different defensive coordinator. But, man, from the get-go, he took this roster that the front office did a great job like patching things up and giving them a well-balanced unit in front of them. But it was not a team flooded with superstars. And he had them playing fast, not blowing coverages, keeping everything in front of them. And they turned into a really solid defense that by year's end was a really good defense, if not a great defense, that almost, I don't want to say carried them to a Super Bowl, but was essential to them winning the AFC last year. And I think last year in general was a great year for him, for Lou Anarumo, but it was really capped off in that AFC Championship where he made some unbelievably impressive adjustments with his coverage on the back end to not just slow down Patrick Mahomes, but literally shut him out in the second half. And without Lou Anarumo, they do not come back from 20-3 in the second half against the Chiefs. So really impressed by him. Schematically speaking, he's going to do a little bit of everything, honestly. His fronts will be varied. I think he leans 4-3, but he'll come out in 3. It is really I shouldn't even say 3-4. He runs a 4-2-5 nickel base, as most teams do these days. But as far as what the edge players are doing, they might be standing up. They might have their hand in the dirt. So he'll mix up their fronts. And on the back end, really mixes up the coverages as well. Leans a little bit towards zone, but not afraid to go man coverage either. And really mixes up the different zone calls as well. He'll go single high, he'll go split safety, he'll do the Fangio stuff, he'll go cover 3, he'll go press man, almost like a Belichick style defense. He really does mix things up, and I think that's commendable, and it's not easy to coach that to a defense when you're doing a lot of different stuff. So definitely impressed by Lou Anarumo. I think he's even ascending. And if you're a little bit pessimistic about the offensive staff, I think he provides some optimism for the defensive staff where they rank 14th in the league. So it was a lot of time on coach and scheme. I don't normally start with them, but I think that's such a big point of emphasis with the Bengals and a big reason why they come in a little bit lower than maybe some Bengals fans may have hoped. But let's now get into the roster portion of this video. We're going to rank every position group, how they stack up against the rest of the league. But first off, I do need to go through their offseason, which was one of the cleanest, easiest, prettiest off seasons that you'll see. Basically an eye for any loss that they had. Not making too many big splashes, kind of running it back, getting a little bit better at where they were worse off last year, and bringing it back into another year with a team that accomplished a lot last year. So really what you'll notice is on that offensive line, 3 starters on the way out, Quentin Spain, Trey Hopkins, and Riley Reif, but theoretically upgrading at all 3 of those positions via free agency. Alex Kappa from the Bucks, Ted Karras from the Patriots, and Lyle Collins from the Cowboys. I would say all 3 of those players are upgrades. So that was a big priority for them. They flip tight end. They get cheaper for a player that they probably view as very similar, going from CJ Uzama to Hayden Hurst. They do lose Larry Ogunjobi. They're trying to address that in the 3rd round with Zach Carter. I have my questions on if he's going to be able to do that. But they extended B.J. Hill to really be that starting defensive lineman next year. And then really their only other loss was technically Trey Waynes, who played like 200 snaps last year. They drafted Cam Taylor-Britt in the 2nd round. So if the way they operated here, literally every single position that they lost someone, they went and acquired another piece. if that doesn't tell you that they're very hesitant on retaining Jesse Bates here when they go and draft Daxton Hill in the first round, when their offseason was literally grab one piece at each position that they lost, the only thing they have not lost yet is Jesse Bates, but they draft Daxton Hill in the first round. So is Jesse Bates going to be a part of this team next year? That's another major question for this defense as a whole. He is their best defensive player. So that is something we are going to talk about as we get into the roster here. But first, we are going to break down the offense, starting with the quarterback room, where they rank 5th in the league for me, entering the top 5. I had them, I believe it was either 9th or 10th last year. Kind of planted my flag and said, I don't mind the ACL. I think Joe Burrow is going to come back and play like exactly the quarterback I know he is. His film was great as a rookie, I had no doubt. Ranked him top 10 coming into the year, and as I mentioned, went to war for Joe Burrow against Cowboys fans. Got a lot of criticism when I said he's better than Dak Prescott, and look where we are now. My pre-draft comparison for Joe Burrow, I don't think could have aged any better based on what we've seen now through his first 2 seasons, where I said he is Tom Brady from the waist up, as far as most notably that leadership and winning personality and that aura that he has, that team buy-in that he creates. He overturned this culture overnight the second the Bengals drafted him. But beyond that, an incredible processor for such a young quarterback. I don't know the next time we'll see a quarterback coming out of college so good at identifying coverages, making good decisions, getting the ball out, playing like a pro-style quarterback. Joe Burrow was so good at that at LSU and has been that from the second he got here. I think he's already one of the best quarterbacks in the league at processing defenses and making decisions. And then the other Tom Brady thing is, his arm does hold him back a little bit. He doesn't have Justin Herbert's arm. He doesn't have Aaron Rodgers' arm, Patrick Mahomes. No, he's got to win in other ways. But one thing that he does that Tom Brady can't do is the Aaron Rodgers from what I say is the waist down aspect of things, where I think athletically speaking and his pocket sense and the way he moves and extends plays with his feet and his ability to throw on the move is very Aaron Rodgers-esque. He just doesn't have the arm talent of an Aaron Rodgers, but he brings that, in structure, frankly, elite play a lot of the times, and he brings a lot of elite playmaking on the move as well. Even if he can't put the ball 50, 55 yards down the field, he's still going to find windows that most quarterbacks aren't going to find, and he has enough core balance and technique in his ability to throw on the move where he's still accurate despite not having that see-ball, hit-ball arm that some of the elite quarterbacks have. So, to me, he is already a top 5 quarterback in this league. I don't put him in that elite tier yet, but if he repeats what he did last year and this team they don't necessarily have to go on a deep playoff run every year, but if he continues to play well in the playoffs as he did, it's not going to be long before I consider Joe Burrow a tier 1 quarterback, and that's really the most ringing endorsement you can give of their quarterback room. Their backup room's not very good, so you got to keep Joe Burrow upright. It's a big part of the reason they brought in some more offensive linemen this year. But let's move on and talk about this receiving unit, which is going to rank 3rd in the league for me, but it is the best wide receiver trio in the league. So you have Jamar Chase, who came in Rookie of the Year and balled the hell out, dude, from the very get-go. The sky is the limit for him. He can be the best wide receiver in the NFL. What stands out the most about Jamar Chase, I think, is his run-after-catch ability, where he is a bitch to tackle, not just in the open field, but over the middle. He'll catch the ball with a safety or a slot corner breathing down on him. He'll take a hit, spin off, and get another 10-plus yards off of it. He has really good long-striding, deceptive speed that he'll use to pull away from people. So he's got that. He's tough. He'll put on a stiff arm. He's to me right behind like Debo for the best run-after-catch receiver in the league. DJ Moore and A.J. Brown are up there as well. But he's also a great ball winner down the sideline. He's someone Joe Burrow trusts to just put it up one-on-one down the sideline, go win, convert the chains and some, and he'll do that. He's really good at ball tracking. He has the size and leaping ability and strong hands to do that. And the other areas that, I mean, he has some room to improve on, I think he's going to continue to improve on. Most notably is his route running. I wouldn't describe Ja'Marr Chase at 21 years old as having super crisp, snappy routes. He gets the job done, but room to improve there. There's no physical limitations for him to not continue to develop in that way, and I expect him to do, which is terrifying. But the other thing that's already really good, that's only going to get better in time, is that back shoulder chemistry that he has with Joe Burrow. And it was already there because they played together at LSU, and it was definitely there here in Cincinnati. And when they got single high and Ja'Marr had one-on-one on the outside, they're able to make an adjustment where, you know, if they're playing off, or maybe he gets pressed and Ja'Marr Chase doesn't stack and clear deep, they're able to make an adjustment where, all right, if you're stacked, I'm going to put it deep, you're going to go get it vertically. But if the corner has good coverage, get ready for that well-timed back shoulder at whatever yard they've worked it out. And Joe Burrow is accurate enough to put it in the right spot where he can out-physical the corner and go get it. So, I mean, man, there's everything in the tool belt with Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. They're just getting started. And their, you know, dominance together is I think going to be historic. If we look back, and this is a little premature, but if we look back in 10 years and they're the most dominant quarterback wide receiver duo ever, that's not really going to surprise me, or probably shouldn't surprise any of you. And then it's not just him. You have T. Higgins, who's just like we talked about with Mike Williams in my Chargers deep dive, almost an identical player, honestly, both coming out of Clemson. I think T's hands are a little bit more consistent than Mike Williams. But for the most part, you're getting that perimeter receiver to work the sidelines, run out routes against off coverage, run some of those comebacks that we described as well with Ja'Marr Chase, be a ball winner on the outside. Very complimentary to Ja'Marr Chase on the perimeter, because you can put Ja'Marr Chase in the slot if you want, keep Higgins on the outside, but they don't have to do that because they have Tyler Boyd, who's just kind of hanging out at this point. He was this team's number one wide receiver just 2 years ago. Back-to-back years, they nailed T. Higgins, they nailed Ja'Marr Chase, and Tyler Boyd's like, all right, I'll be the number 3. Just let me know when you need me. And he's there when they need him, in the slot, make tough catches, a physical player over the middle of the field, a good athlete with strong hands and good run-after-catch ability, plays into his role as a blocker for this offense as well. So all these guys have their role within this offense. It's very clear-cut, and it's really difficult to defend this trio. Honestly, it's one of the thinner groups behind those 3. They're really betting on those guys staying healthy. You've got Stanley Morgan, undrafted out of Nebraska. Mike Thomas has been around this league for a long time, never really broken out. Trent Taylor, kind of a slot type. Trent Irvin has made some plays for this team as a rotational piece, but you know, it's these 3 got to stay healthy, or you might actually see a little bit more 12 personnel bringing in someone like Drew Sample, because I don't know how much talent they're counting on. And that is something that they were able to achieve last year. It's difficult to expect 3 wide receivers to make it through the whole year. Not knock on wood, but it is something to note that they didn't have to go to their depth too much last year at all. Then you have at tight end, I like the acquisition of Hayden Hurst. I would call that a push with CJ Uzomah. I think Hurst is more athletic, but doesn't quite have the toughness that CJ Uzomah has, so a little bit give and take there. Hurst is a good fit with this offense. I was excited to see what he was going to do in Atlanta with the wide zone and the ability to kind of get these speedy tight ends to sneak off and run crossing routes, but then they drafted Kyle Pitts, and Hayden Hurst was kind of an afterthought. So I like the idea of the Bengals going to get him, someone that was just traded for a second-round pick for Atlanta, and they let him go. So I like the acquisition. He might even have some higher upside than he's shown, but he's not a great blocker. I don't know if and when that's going to come along. He is already up there in age. I want to say he's like 28, 29 years old. So I'm not going to bet on some breakout here, but I think he can replace mostly what they had in CJ Uzomah. Not really worried about that. You got Drew Sample, more just a blocking specialist. Mitch Wilcox, a young player, maybe could step up as tight end 3. But also Thad Moss, who played with Joe Burrow at LSU, was at a point in time one of my favorite tight ends in that draft class, but major medical concerns been revealed since then. Good athlete, strong hands, a really willing blocker. Honestly, could be an ideal tight end too in this scheme if he can stay healthy, and that's a major if. So there's your tight end room. And then with the running backs, you know, they'll definitely use Joe Mixon on third downs. He's really good, similar to a lot of things we said about Dalvin Cook in the Vikings deep dive, where you know he's good with the ball in his hands. He's really explosive, and if he's running short routes and screens and check downs, like, you know he's going to be good in space. He's going to be tough to tackle, and if you miss on him, he's going to make you pay. But similar to Dalvin Cook, hasn't really taken that next step, be it from a pass pro standpoint or a route running perspective. Never really had that big year as a receiving back that he's probably physically capable of, but for one reason or another has never been that dominant receiving impact. But he will play a factor in it. And just like last year, I think they will rotate in some of these backups. Now, last year, that man was Samaje Perine, and he's just not very explosive. He knows what he's doing, but man, would it be nice to go to Chris Evans, who I think can handle it. This is another example to me of maybe the staff being a little bit closed-minded. I would have loved to see more Chris Evans. I felt like every time he got on the field last year, he was explosive, especially on third downs, as a route runner with smooth hands. Such a better athlete than Samaje Perine, who it felt like they were almost forcing checkdowns to at times. Make that man Chris Evans, and I think it's going to open some things up underneath for this offense when you take Joe Mixon off the field. He's a really talented player. Really hoping the staff can wake up on that one. So that really rounds out your group of weapons there. Again, ranking third in the league for me. Top 5 at quarterback, top 3 at weaponry. This is the beating drum of this entire team. Just as they were last year for the most part, they are going to live and die via these playmakers and Joe Burrow. Before we go any further with the video, I want to take a second to tell you about my friends at SeatGeek. I truly believe that SeatGeek outclasses all of the other ticketing apps. It's where I buy all of my tickets, and for good reason. I really enjoyed partnering with them. They're great with me, but they just have the best app, the best user interface. They have the best prices. You get your tickets immediately. They have customer support. Again, I really think you should be buying your tickets on SeatGeek. If you're going to football games, other sporting events, concerts, do it on SeatGeek. And now using promo code FranchiseGuy, you will save $20 on your first purchase. And all the better, you're going to support my channel in the process. So again, that's promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. And let's get back to the video. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there are aspects of this team that you're hoping can be better than they were last year, so that they can go back on one of these deep playoff runs. And for me, this offensive line, they addressed it, obviously. They're hoping it is a massive improvement from what it is last year. I think it's undoubtedly going to be an improvement. But if everything clicks into place here, and this becomes what they could be for me, which is just like a good top 12-ish offensive line, this offense will become a world beater. Now, it'd be nice if the play calling complemented that a little bit better as well, but you get the point. They're hoping that this offensive line can be that big thing that they improve, because it's a miracle that they were able to go on a Super Bowl run last year with the pieces that they had. So from left to right now, you have Jonah Williams still in there. He's the piece you felt good about last year. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy, but technically sound dude. You like what you got there at left tackle. Not the most efficient pass protector. He'll lose, but very solid. And then run blocking, again, technically sound, tough dude, but not the most dominant people mover up front. But overall, you've got a good left tackle there in Jonah Williams. At left guard is going to be where one of those question marks come in. Right now, slated to be Jackson Carman. Was a second-round pick for this team last year, who definitely struggled in his rookie season, had some really ugly offensive, pass protection performances. And moving it over from tackle in college, you would have hoped he was better, but I do still believe in Jackson Carman. It's just, to me, a matter of continuing to work at his craft, get more comfortable at guard, and settle in there, where last year he was having bad performances, kind of in and out of the lineup, and you're just hoping that he can settle in. You don't have a ton of answers if he doesn't. So that's going to be I would say the one major red flag from a roster perspective on this entire offense. But I believe in him, and he is a good run blocker. He's a big guy up front, and he buys into that element of it, especially if they go inside zone. There is a note here that, Carman and Ted Karras, they're not the best wide zone run blockers for this offense as far as finding scheme fits on the offensive line. But that brings me to Ted Karras, who's established himself as a sound starting veteran center. Wasn't always that. Kind of had to fight his way to that title, but gets paid here in Cincinnati, moving over to center from playing guard for the Patriots. I think he'll handle that just fine. But as I kind of just alluded to, that wide zone fit, I think, is a bit of a question mark from a run block perspective. Center is really important in these wide zone schemes, because you're going to have to seal off a nose tackle quite often, and that requires a really good step and a really good first step and ability to get that leverage quickly, and I don't know if Ted Karras can be that. So it is something to monitor, but in general, he's an upgrade in pass protection, and it's not like you had some great wide zone blocker last year in Trey Hopkins either. So you're pushing there and getting a better pass protector at center. Someone that's really smart, going to communicate blitz pickups really well, anchor well in pass protection, might struggle a little bit in pass pro if he gets a one-on-one with a quicker guy or sliding over against difficult stunts. Like, he's not perfect, but he's solid. And then at right guard, I think this is a great signing. Getting Alex Kappa. There's only so many young, good offensive linemen that hit free agency. The Bucs couldn't afford them, and the Bengals attract him here, about $10 million a year. And I think they're gonna get much, much better right guard play, because you can't get any worse. I don't know if anybody had worse right guard play than the Bengals had last year, especially in the playoffs, where you had Akeem Adeniji, who had no idea what he was doing out there. So getting Kappa in there is the most clear-cut upgrade that this team is making. Feel good about that. And then at right tackle, I love signing La'el Collins. This guy's a monster, and you want to talk about wide zone scheme fit. He's going to be able to get on the move and dominate people down the field on lead blocks, not just sealing the edge, but clearing ways down the field. But in pass protection, he's pretty good. He's had his ups and downs, but is better than Riley Reif, who he had last year. So overall, I want to preface this by saying I like the signing a lot, especially at the price tag they got him at. But that price tag was suspect, and the Cowboys released him. And last year, there was some weird stuff going on where they basically chose Terrence Steele over La'el Collins, like during the season when La'el Collins was out there. Now, eventually, Terrence Steele kind of showed that he just isn't nearly the player, and that's why we're excited about La'el Collins here. But from him getting released from Dallas, them making those decisions with him last year, the injuries that have piled up with him over the last couple of years, and the fact that he hit the open market and only got 3 years, $21 million, there's something going on there. I don't know if it's medical. I don't know if it's a concern about him off the field, which was a major issue with him coming out of LSU. He was supposed to be a first-round pick and went undrafted over some stuff, and then the Cowboys ended up picking him up anyway. But I just want to say there's something going on with La'el Collins, and I don't think it should surprise any of us if an injury pops up or he gets into a fight with the coaching staff, or if something happens. I can't quite put a finger on what that might be, but it's not a surefire answer at right tackle. I think it's probably going to work. I feel good about it. But it is something to keep an eye on as a potential weakness for this team, especially because their depth is not very good. So you have the one guy to me that is interesting as not just a depth piece, but someone that could plug in at either guard or right tackle if needed, is Deontay Smith, who was a rookie last year out of ECU, 4th round picked. I really liked. Athletic dude, not bad pass protection technique. So he's going to fit the wide zone stuff from a run game perspective. And, just pass pro is just going to have to come along. But someone with certain upside and the one guy that I would hope maybe could really fill in here if you needed him. And again, has some of that guard tackle flexibility. You got Isaiah Prince, who I don't think could, pass protect against a peewee football player, let alone an NFL defensive lineman. He showed that last year. He can move people in the run game, but you don't want him out there. Keem Adeniji, definitely don't trust him after what he showed in that playoff run. It was a freaking rotating door at right guard for them with him. The only other kind of interior piece that I would moderately trust as a backup would be Trey Hill, who got on the field late last season and I thought played pretty well. This is someone that I thought was more of a 3rd round type of guy, a guy that had really good athleticism, a young player coming out of Georgia who just tested really, really poorly. But his tape showed that he was a better athlete than his mediocre testing scores. Actually, way worse than mediocre. It was horrific. It was like he put down a box of Krispy Kremes before he went to his pro day or something. But I do think he's a good athlete with upside in this system. Played well in the one or two games that we got to see from him. So I think there's something there. We just kind of have to wait and see. So between Trey Hill and Deontay Smith, you have some interesting young pieces. Cordell Volson drafted in the 4th round. Personally, I didn't see a whole lot there. They like him. They spent a pretty high pick on him. We'll see. But yeah, it's just not the best depth here. And if Carmen can't figure it out or something happens to Lyle Collins, you could be back to something close to what they had last year relatively quickly. But I do trust this group. I think they have the players in front of them to be more of a top half offensive line. So right now, they're kind of right around there, 13th for pass pro, 21st for run blocking. And I think they can be a little bit better than that and ultimately unlock this offense in a lot of ways, vertically especially, but also with a better run game, and help this team take some of those strides up that we've alluded to that I do think they need. I will mention the skill player blocking. Hayden Hurst is going to be their primary tight end. He's just not a very good blocker, but they will use Drew Sample in certain packages, and he's a pretty good run blocker. These receivers are all pretty solid. Jamar Chase is more of a runoff threat. Could improve as a run blocker. He'll have some impact blocks, but didn't grade out particularly well there. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, much more physical, good run blockers. But to wrap up the offense with the run game and the running backs, they rank 5th for me at running back, so the talent doesn't stop with the receivers. Joe Mixon is so fun, man. So fun going back to watch him. He's like the running back I would probably build in a lab or like a Madden create a player. Just someone that's 225 pounds, a good 6 feet tall, not too short, super fast, really quick feet, good enough in the receiving game, good vision, can make you miss, can run over you, good in space. He to me is the style of running back that I appreciate the most. And I rank him 5th in the league. And he did some really impressive stuff last year despite some, pretty poor run blocking. Now, when he did get well-blocked runs, he made the most of them. And I expect him to do the same this year, and hopefully he can get more well-blocked runs and be even better than he was last year, at least statistically speaking. So he's a beast. He's still in his prime. Big fan of Joe Mixon, and he's obviously the reason they rank 5th. You got Samaje Perine as the backup. He'll come in and do his thing, running straight forward, hard and fast. That's basically what he does. He's fine. Chris Evans, I think, is going to be more of a receiving back role, but in a wide zone fit, he's got some speed and maybe could surprise a little bit if they used him more in a wide zone stretch run setup. So there's your running back room. And then, Joe Burrow will contribute to the numbers advantage that they can have, mostly because of the threat of that play action boot where he's so good. They might sprinkle in 4 or 5 read options throughout the year just to kind of keep defenses honest, but for the most part, not some major impact in the run game. But he has some mobility and can be a partial threat. As I said, mostly off of the threat of that play action boot where he can't crash down that backside defensive end. So this gives us the 4th ranked offense overall. Much better in the passing game where they rank 4th. And as I mentioned, if they can get some slight steps up from the pass pro and the pass game coaching, just see this young coaching staff just evolve a little bit, this could be the best passing offense in the league. And then from a run game perspective, they are 17th because they don't have the best blocking up front. And I felt like their offensive coaching was particularly poor with the run game. Just so predictable, not a lot of variation there. Again, just mix it up a little bit. I'll feel better about this offense overall. They certainly have the upside to be the best offense in the league. And it really comes down, honestly, to the offensive line and the coaching staff, because you are not worried about the quarterback and the wide receivers here, not even in the slightest. But now let's flip over to Lou Anarumo's defense, where it's a really well spread out unit. I do wish they had a little bit more star talent on that side of the ball, like a lot of these other top defenses are going to have. But starting up front, I do actually only have them ranked as the 21st best pass rush in the league. You have Trey Hendrickson, who's awesome and was outstanding last year, a menace, and honestly was a number 1 pass rusher as far as how consistently he was getting after the quarterback and how much they leaned on his production up front. You hope he can repeat that. It was the biggest year of his career. Not necessarily any reason to think he can't. But besides him, who else are you really counting on to consistently win one-on-one matchups and to get after the quarterback? I don't see anybody. You've got Sam Hubbard on the opposite side, who's fine. Like, he is the least exciting starting player in the league. He's technically a starting caliber edge player, but I'd way rather him be your number 3, where he plays early downs, does his contain rush, can be a decent pass rusher when they do drop back. But for him to be a full-time starter, he just does not have the physical tools to consistently get after the quarterback. And any good tackle is going to lock him up, and you see that pretty consistently. There's a lot of teams that have third edge rushers better than Sam Hubbard. And then on the interior, I like DJ Reader and I like BJ Hill, but they are not alpha interior rushers. They're kind of persistent, strong, solid pass rushers. But you don't have a go-getter up front. You don't have a consistent pressure getter up front on the interior. So that's really your starting 4. It's Trey Hendrickson, who you hope can land that bull rush, bend around the edge, put on an inside move, get in there. And if you don't, you're going to be waiting a little bit longer for any of these other guys to consistently win. And even then, Trey Hendrickson can be a little bit matchup dependent because he's got alligator arms, and sometimes the guys with really long arm length can kind of lock him up and take him out of a game. So even then, a bit of a question mark. But I'm not going to say question mark. It's just sometimes you're going to need other guys to step up. Beyond those 4, I do like some of these young edge pieces. I really liked them in the draft last year, both Cam Sample and Joseph Asai. I think Sample can provide some juice both off the edge and lined up as a 3 technique, where he might be even better with his quickness and his get off and power. I thought he showed some good flashes last year and might be building off of that in the next year. And we get to take a look at Joseph Asai, who I thought was a top 50 player in the draft, ended up falling to the 3rd and then got hurt. We didn't get to see him at all as a rookie. So hopefully one of those 2 guys can eventually become an upgrade to Sam Hubbard. It doesn't feel likely that that's going to be there this year. It could happen. Both those guys have much more upside than Sam Hubbard, who was a 3rd-round pick himself. So that's definitely an area of this defense that you look at 2 players there that could provide a spark and something better than what they had last year. But beyond that, you got Khalid Kareem is a rotational early down guy. Josh Tupou is a run defender. Tyler Shelvin's a run defender. They do draft Zach Carter in the 3rd round. I had a 6th round grade on Zach Carter. I personally did not see it with him. I did not like that draft pick. He has theoretical athletic upside, even though it didn't always show on tape and he didn't test very well. Was not a productive pass rusher at Florida. Got bodied at the Senior Bowl. I thought he was overdrafted, and for him to be someone that they might potentially be giving 300 or 400 snaps as an interior rusher this year to replace the Larry Ogunjobi role, I don't just not like that. I actually am concerned about that if they're kind of forcing him to be something that I don't think he's ready to be. So 21st for pass rush, it's not terrible, but again, we want this team to get to the playoffs and make some noise. For the most part, I think any relatively solid offensive line is going to look at this group and say, all right, we'll chip Trey Hendrickson and we don't have any problems here. Now, from a run defense perspective, it's like the opposite. This is one of the best run defense groups in the league, and that starts up front, where DJ Reader is honestly making a case to be, I would say, the 2nd best nose tackle in the league from a run defense perspective, behind Vita Vea, who's just different. But even then, I think DJ Reader last year was, pretty comparable. He's incredible. Watching this team back, it was play after play after play. DJ Reader again and again and again. You want to try to run past him? Okay, he's getting double teamed, doesn't matter. He's two gapping, doesn't matter. He is going to shed. He's going to hold that discipline. You're not moving him anywhere. And he's going to lock you down. So I was blown away by what DJ Reader did last year. He is the biggest reason this ranks 4th. But you got BJ Hill next to him, who's a beast in his own right. I cannot believe they were able to get him for Billy Price. What a great trade. This team just had a great freaking offseason last year in general. BJ Hill was a part of that. And he got to really wake up in that playoff run because Larry Ogunjobi got hurt. I actually said it on Twitter. I was like, obviously you're not happy that you lost Larry Ogunjobi, but they may have upgraded getting BJ Hill, and I'll stand by that. I think BJ Hill is just a really good defensive tackle, and to have him next to DJ Reader is awesome. You wish one of these guys were maybe a little bit more juiced up and a little bit better at getting after the quarterback. That's where they're hoping Zach Carter or Cam Sample can come in on 3rd downs and be that 3-tech with some disruption. I don't know if those pieces are going to be that for them or not. But both these guys are rocked up, really good defensive tackles. And when they want to shut down the run, they will mostly be able to do it. In large part because you will then take Trey Hendrickson off the field in those gotta-have-it run-stop situations where you'll at least get Khalid Kareem, Cam Sample, who are a little bit better run defenders. Trey Hendrickson is a really poor run defender. I think it's in large part because, like a lot of star pass rushers, trying to save a little bit of that stamina for rush downs, but also he has really short arms. So for him to stack and shed, it's not really his game. So you will take him off in gotta-have-it run-down situations. But he is a bit of an issue when he's out there. And Sam Hubbard's, solid across the board, high effort dude with decent traits to defend the run. You've even got some good depth there. Josh Tupou, Tyler Shelvin. They have a type at defensive tackle for the most part. They want these space-eating thumpers up in the middle. Tupou and Shelvin are definitely that. So that's your defensive line. And I guess I did forget to mention Jeffrey Gunter. They drafted him late day 3. Probably not going to give you much this year, by the way, but I did kind of like him as a day 3 pick. Really high energy guy with some decent pass rush moves. So I guess someone maybe down the road, but I don't think we see too much of him this year. Maybe even a practice squad piece. So let's move on to the linebackers, where it's a kind of middle of the league group with a little bit of potential to be better than that. Kind of starting to sense the theme where I was talking about earlier, it's a well spread out defense, but not a lot of stars. Logan Wilson, I think, can be a star. Really like him. Just kind of the classic modern linebacker that you want in that, yes, there's those 225-pound guys. That's great. Those guys can do their thing, but If you can get a 240-pound guy that can move and cover and also be an impact against the run, now you're talking. And I think they might have that in Logan Wilson. Had his ups and downs last year in year 2, but his playoff run was incredible. And he was a star defensive player for this team in the playoffs. So if he resumes what he did, both as a cover guy, where I thought he was flying all over the field, getting good depth, taking stuff away, sensing where the quarterback wanted to go, but also was a much better run defender, much more secure tackler, which has actually been a major issue for him in his first couple of years here. Was in the bottom half as far as missed tackle percentage among starting linebackers, but cleaned things up as the year went on. So you're hoping that you get second half Logan Wilson, not first half Logan Wilson. And if you do, I do think he's trending up towards being a stud linebacker. Right now, you feel pretty good about what you're getting there. Then you have Jermaine Pratt next to him. I do think Jermaine Pratt had his best year last year. Their linebackers coach, by the way, is James Betcher, who was the defensive coordinator ahead of Lou Anarumo for the New York Giants. So kind of ironic that he's now working for Lou Anarumo. But I thought he did a good job with someone in Jermaine Pratt, who's been super inconsistent in his career. Still not a perfect year for Jermaine Pratt by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he did a much better job playing disciplined in his coverage to be a good number 2 linebacker next to Logan Wilson. And this is a scheme that puts a lot on these guys in coverage. And I thought they handled it pretty well, especially as the year went on. Pratt, on the other hand, is a liability in run defense. Just someone that does not play with that discipline, not a great tackler, will have splash plays, is a good athlete. But heading into a contract year, I think Jermaine Pratt could even be a little bit better. But as a number 2, I think he's fine. Behind that, it's a lot of young depth that we don't know a ton about. Akeem Davis-Gaither's been rotated in occasionally as a weak side backer, a good cover player with a lot of athleticism, but just is not a factor against the run. He's more of a certain package-specific linebacker. Maybe down the road can overtake Jermaine Pratt as the number 2. Marcus Bailey's a nice player. Coming out of Purdue was always a good player, but had injury questions, and he had to start some games last year due to injury and filled in nicely. He's a nice backup to have. And then Joe Bacci, Clay Johnston, Keandre Jones, just young, whatever depth. They even have a bunch of other names on there. As I mentioned, you got a couple of pretty nice starters, league average linebacker room. Probably not going to make or break their season here. The secondary, on the other hand, I think does have a pretty wide range of outcomes here. And it makes some sense that they rank 14th in the league for DB coverage. And the biggest swing factor here is, do they have Jesse Bates? And without him, I think they would drop probably closer to 22, 23 for me. And now, I love Daxton Hill, don't get me wrong, but Jesse Bates to me is the best cover free safety in the league. And it's not just that. He can cover tight ends. He can come down and play man and hook zones and do more than that. But he was a big part of that defense's domination in the playoffs. He had not just big plays where he created turnovers. It was a big part of that coverage unit on the back end when they did a great job covering those Chiefs receivers down the field. So is he going to be here? I don't know. I have no freaking idea. I hope we get an answer soon. I'm ranking them with him because I'm optimistic that a team that just went to the Super Bowl can recognize, even though they just drafted Daxton Hill, that he is a big part of this defense staying a really good unit. Now, even if they trade him, I still think the range of outcomes is very wide because Daxton Hill was one of my favorite players in this draft class. I stood on the table and was freaking banging the drum for Daxton Hill in the draft. Could not believe he fell as far as he did. One of my favorite safety prospects that I've evaluated since I've been doing draft. And God, there is a chance that he comes in, and I do not say this lightly, is just about as good as Jesse Bates. Like, I think that highly of Daxton Hill. we talked about Joe Mixon being a Madden creative player. Daxton Hill is a Madden creative player defensive back. This guy has high-end speed, absolutely impeccable fluid movement skills. They used him in the slot at Michigan, where he played slot corner, and he could turn his hips and run in man coverage. And when they put him up top at free safety, which wasn't very often, he was instinctive. He crashed. He showed really good zone IQ. The sky's the limit for Daxton Hill. And I think they were hoping Bates would play on the tag, and Daxton Hill will overtake him in a year. And I can't necessarily fault them from a process perspective. It's just a matter of, can you convince Jesse Bates to play on the tag, or maybe you give him a pay increase or something. I don't entirely know how it all is going to work out, but that alone provides a lot of volatility, because obviously, as much as I like Daxton Hill, he's going to be a rookie defensive back. He could struggle early on, just as so many young defensive backs do. So we're starting with that free safety position, which we don't normally do, but that's obviously a wide range of outcomes with that group. Now, your corners, you kind of know what you're getting. You have Chidobe Awuzie, who I will say did have the best year of his career. You hope he doesn't regress back to the mean for him, but I don't see any reason that should happen. He's a physical, smart, lengthy, athletic corner. Feel very good about him. I think he's a low-end number one type of corner. Mike Hilton in the slot, he's getting up there in age or whatever, but he's still one of the best cover slots in the league, and that's really good. He was really good in the playoffs, and now another year as a leader of this defense, and more and more familiar with the scheme, should be really good again. The other corner is definitely a little bit more of a concern. You have Eli Apple, who is just very up and down, physical dude, good in man coverage, but in zone, just not a lot of IQ. And definitely a trash talker, someone that he just has his good games, he has his bad games. I think he gets a bad rap sometimes. I think you could do worse than him as your number two corner, but he's definitely not some good starter opposite of Chidobe Awuzie. And that's where they're kind of hoping Cam Taylor-Britt can eventually overtake him as the cornerback too, but I don't see that happening this year. Cam Taylor-Britt honestly was another player that I thought was overdrafted. I was in general just not big on the Bengals draft with their second, third, and fourth round picks. Now, Cam Taylor-Britt definitely has upside. He's a really fluid athlete. I enjoyed watching him. Definitely moves around, but just someone that's going to have to develop. It's as simple as that, and kind of looks to me like a classic second, third round corner that is going to take some time. So I don't expect him to win this job or give them a whole lot. Trey Flowers isn't going to be that guy. Maybe he can come in and cover tight ends. That's about all he's good for. Jalen Davis, I know, is getting some camp hype. Maybe he surprises, but you're not counting on that. And then you got a bunch of undrafted rookies. So your cornerback 2 spot is fine. Definitely not a huge strength. And I think something that a lot of opposing a lot of opposing offenses are going to target. And then for the most part, this is a defense that has more of a traditional free safety, strong safety relationship. They do like single high coverages, so cover 1, cover 3, and Von Bell is going to be the traditional strong safety, playing around the box, a huge impact in run defense. You'll see they're ranked 8th for DB run support, and Von Bell is almost the single reason why, paired with the fact that everyone else is pretty physical and pretty good coming downhill against the run. So you pair that with a stud run defender in Von Bell, you got a pretty good group here coming up in support against the run. But Von Bell is kind of matchup specific as far as coverage goes. I like him in hook zones, I like him in curl flats, and I like him in man coverage on tight ends. That's about it. They will go split safety. He will occasionally be asked to rotate high, and in those situations, he just doesn't have a lot of range, doesn't have the best deep zone feel. So, and they can occasionally get him matched up on a wide receiver, which I don't like as well. But for the most part, they use him really well, and they lean into his strengths in coverage as an advantage, and they do their best to neuter his weaknesses, which is another tip of the cap to Lou Anarumo for using his skill sets appropriately. Now, if Jesse Bates is here, I think they still have plans to use Daxton Hill in essentially the role that he played for Michigan as a dime corner where he's going to be in the middle of the field. He can play kind of match zones, pick up slot receivers, pick up crossing routes, rotate into a quarters shell. I think Lou Anarumo is an innovative defensive thinker that does look around the league with a lot of the cool coverages in these Fangio systems that they're doing with these, disguised slot corners, rotating high into cover 2 or quarters. If Jesse Bates is here, you could have a star coming off the bench in those third down situations. So, if Bates is there and Daxton Hill is good, and let's just say everyone else stays healthy and Eli Apple's solid, like this could be a top 10 secondary. Really, I think Daxton Hill is someone that provides the potential to impact this defense more than I think most people realize, even with Jesse Bates here, because there's 500 or 600 snaps available for a dime defensive back like Daxton Hill, who has worn every hat at Michigan. He can even step outside and play perimeter corner, by the way, which I haven't even mentioned that possibility. What if Eli Apple goes down and they say, you know what? Let's put Daxton Hill, who has all of the physical tools to play perimeter corner. Let's see if he can handle it. And then does he stick? That's another interesting concept there. So it's a fascinating secondary. I think it's a good group for sure. I hope they can work things out with Jesse Bates, because then you're going to have some question marks, or at least look at this and say, yeah, it's an average group. But I do need to mention the safety depth. Michael Thomas, veteran, good special teamer. Hopefully you don't have to see him out there too much. Tyson Anderson, really athletic box safety that they drafted late. Someone they can groom to potentially replace Von Bell. Going to be a few years there. Henderson, Brandon Wilson, going to be probably scratching and clawing for a roster spot via special teams. So there is your defensive roster, and they come out 20th in pass defense with some of that mediocrity at pass rush, honestly. Maybe some questions in the secondary, a non-elite linebacker group. Just, really solid across the board with an elite free safety, hopefully over the top. And I just, they're disciplined. They're definitely a unit that plays well together. But as you project forward, you do want to see more game-breaking talent, and I just don't know if they necessarily have that. They do grade out better as far as run defense, where they're 10th in the league, and this is what really showed in the playoffs. Like, man, they were dominant against the run against Tennessee and the Raiders, and the Chiefs didn't have much on the ground, and the Rams didn't have anything on the ground. So like that's where their strengths are, at least relative to the rest of the league there. But that, to me, gives them the 15th overall defense. And I know it sounds a little bit low based on how they finished the year, but you do have to look at the roster talent and project forward. I think it is a group that overachieved a little bit. Maybe some regression to the mean there, but it's definitely still a good defense that I think can be a little bit better than that. But I do think they're kind of at their ceiling a little bit. I don't know. It's not a defense that gets me like super fired up. It's just a good, sound, solid unit that I think will be in the top half of the league. So we're going to recap all of this and then get into the schedule, what my win total projections are for the Bengals. For special teams, they do grade out as a tier 2 unit, which is in the great tier. I mean, what they did with McPherson as their kicker was special. That dude's electric. And you fully expect him to maintain that confidence as one of the best kickers in the league. They graded out elsewhere well in terms of coverage and punts and all that stuff. So, Huber's not the best punter, but in general, it's a really good special teams and plays into the balance that this team has across the board. So one more recap of their strengths and weaknesses. It's interesting because they don't have a ton of true strengths, but they don't have a ton of true weaknesses either. So their strengths are obviously quarterback and wide receiver. Like, they can dominate a game with this group and did it plenty of times last year. And then I think just having a balanced defense that has a lot of different answers for stuff is a strength of this team. But inversely, like a lack of elite defensive talent is also a weakness for me. Yes, you have Jesse Bates, but that is the hardest position to consistently make an impact on the game. He will splash and make huge impacts just as he did in the playoffs last year, but you can take a safety out of the game. What you can't take out of the game is an elite corner, an elite pass rusher, and I wouldn't say that they have that. So tough to kind of quantify if the defense is a strength or a weakness. I think the answer, depending on the week, might be yes. And then offensive coaching is, to me, their biggest weakness. I don't need to get back into it again. I said at the top of the show, it's my biggest concern with this team is Zach Taylor and their innovation on the offensive side of the ball. But now let's wrap up with this team's schedule, where Vegas is down on this team. It's not just me saying this team might not repeat what they did last year. That's actually what the market is saying here. If anything, I'm a little higher on this Bengals team based on where the market has them. 9.5 wins, Vegas over under, a Super Bowl odds at 20-1, which I think puts them at like 10th in the league. If you want to say Super Bowl odds are a power ranking of sorts. But some of that makes sense when you look at this schedule. I mean, it's redundant with all these AFC teams. They all have gauntlets. Now, at least they're not in the AFC West, and they don't have to play the NFC West. But it doesn't mean it's easy. It does start more favorable. I think they have a pretty good chance of starting 4-0. But then they got 2 tough games at Baltimore, division game, a team I have ranked higher. Sunday Night Football at New Orleans, my number 1 secondary going up against these receivers. Can they slow down the Bengals' biggest strength and win? Tough game in the dome there in New Orleans. Definitely won't be easy. Then you got Atlanta, Cleveland, Carolina. Should all be winnable games there. So, if they drop one they weren't expecting, pull off an upset at either Baltimore or New Orleans, you're hoping to be heading into the Week 10 bye week at 7-2. That's really what this is about, because the second half of this schedule, it is a murderer's row. At Pittsburgh might not sound terrible, but that's a Sunday night game. Kenny Pickett's going to be getting more comfortable. TJ Watt in this pass rush against a potentially questionable offensive line. Division slugfest. That is far from a given. They will be favorites. At Tennessee, again, I think they'll be favorites, but that is far from a given, man. The pissed off Titans team who felt like they were the better team in the playoffs last year in their house. Both those will be tough. You got a pissed off Kansas City team coming to town. Excited for that. It's going to be one of the better games of the year. Cleveland Week 14. We're going to find out what the Watson situation is. They should be able to win that, but if Watson's in there, we know what that Cleveland team's upside is, and they might be trying to go on a late season push. At Tampa Bay, we know that's not easy. At New England, a Bill Belichick December game, definitely not a gimme. Then you got Buffalo and Baltimore to wrap things up, 2 teams I have ranked higher. So if you can go 500, that would be impressive, and that would get you to 11. I do think it's possible, but personally, I think this is more of a 10-win team, which is definitely a theme with a lot of these AFC teams. It's not that I don't believe in the Bengals. I just think over-unders in that conference are really tough this year. I will say 20-1 on the Super Bowl's pretty good. Like, you're getting Joe Burrow. If he can get in, like we saw what happened last year, I definitely think this team can win the Super Bowl and will be in the mix if they get into the playoffs. So I would say bet the Super Bowl at 20-1 than betting over any day of the week there. But anyway, it's going to be a really fun season, man. All these AFC teams, it's going to be week in, week out, just a bunch of good teams, a bunch of good quarterbacks. The Bengals will be right in that mix. Very curious what you guys think about this ranking, kind of the way we're projecting them. Again, make sure you guys like the video. It really helps me out. Make sure you subscribe. We are going to have here right before the season starts my official predictions. These are more win projections, but I'm gonna make a more hard prediction on how many games I think these guys win. when we get up a couple days before the season starts. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. I really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you guys for the next deep dive in a few days. Peace out.